Okay, in this video we're going to do a 1-point perspective of that shape in the corner. But before we start, we're going to tape our page down nice and straight. Even though in perspectives we're not necessarily going to rely as heavily on our tools, or rather like our T-square on the board as a tool. We will for 1-point perspectives, which we are going to do this one in as a 1-point perspective. But we'll see when we do some 2-point perspectives how our tools can kind of become a little bit freer. But before that, we tape our page down. We draw our border and title block. 1/4 inch on each side, a 1/2 inch up from that for the title block. 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. Always making sure that our T-square is flat against our board. And that when we use our triangles, or if we want to get very technical, our set square, and we have that flat against the board as well. And then divvy up the areas of our title block. So we've got 4, 3, 2, 1.5. Okay, so when it comes to perspective views, they rely on those horizon lines and the vanishing point. And depending on where you place your object in relation to the horizon line and the vanishing point is going to make then a difference of how it looks. So I'm going to just put my horizon line kind of towards the center of the page, and I'm going to draw this shape once and then show you some demos of it with some squares as well, just so you can kind of see of just how that is going to affect how it looks. So I'll just put my horizon line down as a guideline. And again, for vanishing point, I could put it anywhere on there. It's going to depend on how I want the object to look. But I'm just going to put it kind of towards the middle. I know it's skewed a little towards the left, but that's just fine. And I'll draw my shape kind of up here. So again, I always just like to start with an overall bounding box of any shape. And I'm not going to take too many measurements. Or actually, can I fit it up here where I have it? No. So you know what? I'm going to do this one at 1/2 scale. That's how I'll fix it. So I'll do it at 1/2 scale, and I'll put it as a 2-inch box rather than a 4-inch box. So I'm just going to measure out the front face because I'm going to be doing a 1-point perspective, which means that everything is just going to kind of be based off of that front face. And those are 1.5, so they'd be 3/4 of an inch. Spaces on here, 3/4 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch. I'm just going to lay out my little cross shape. Perspectives are particularly another place where I find just that bounding box subtractive method the easiest, because it's, for me, easiest to just kind of draw perspectives based on boxes and then work my way out of it, kind of chisel my way out rather than draw it out. So I've got that little front face there, and now for my depth, I'm just going to project all of these lines towards the vanishing point. So using a straight edge, do I have something that isn't going to give such a horrific glare on the board thing? Just because that glare is really bright. I don't think I do. Because you can use really anything as long as it has a straight edge to it. So for example, I'll use this pack of Post-its. I'm just going to line up points with the vanishing point and then just bring it towards. Some people bring all the way across, like all the way to the vanishing point. So they'll line up the point with the vanishing point and they bring the line all the way there. I don't like to do that, similar to the way I approach orthographics, just because that's giving me more line that I need to erase, and I want to give myself less lines to erase. I don't want to give myself more things to do. Trying to lower the brightness on here a little bit so that way my lines are a little easier to see. But you can bring your lines all the way if you'd like. I usually just bring them kind of towards it and just leave it at that. Bring my line towards it, bring my line towards it, bring my line towards it. So I'm just lining up that vanishing point with the point on my object. And that's where I'm projecting all of these lines to. So there is no particular angle. And furthermore, all of these lines are kind of coming at a different angle themselves. Then I'll establish my depth, which in this case would be a 1/2 inch since I did this at half scale. And I'll just kind of do that on any one of these lines, because then it's just a game of projecting up, projecting over, projecting up. And then let me measure a 1/2 inch on this one, which pretty much did it at exactly a 1/2 inch, and this one too. Sometimes I'm really good at guessing numbers, but that's all it is. It's just guessing measurements. If you spend so many years drawing lines based on measurements, you get really good at estimating what they'll look like. And then all of these guides projecting towards that vanishing point would get erased. And I have this object as a 1-point perspective. Because I have it sitting here above the vanishing point, I get what's called a worm's eye view. And that's because I can see underneath the object and kind of like I'm a little worm in the ground looking at it. If I draw my object underneath the vanishing point, or underneath the horizon line, I get what's called a bird's eye view because I'll be able to see the top of the object. So I'll do pretty much in the same spot, I'll do another version of this box, or this cross rather. And so it's 2 inches, 3/4. Trying to measure out 3/4. And another 2 inches, 3/4, 3/4. Trying to make it a little bit of a faster process for me. Whoops. So I've got that same front face here of that little cross. And again, now when I project, I'm going to project my depth towards the vanishing point. which, whoops, I hit my lamp. And so I'm just going to line up a straight edge with a point on my object. I would recommend using like your triangle or your ruler to do this, but I just don't want that glare on that screen, so I was trying to find something that wouldn't give me a glare. But you can use anything. And I'm just going from one point to that vanishing point. This technique here of bringing the line all the way there, it's just going to give me more to erase. But I know this is what some students feel most comfortable with doing, particularly first starting out. So that's what we'll do. And then I'll go back my depth, which I'll have to measure on a few of these. So I'll just measure a 1/2 inch back here, a 1/2 inch on this line, and a 1/2 inch on this line. And once we get some of those measurements, then we can start poking our way through. So even though this is the exact same object as the one that I drew previously on the up here, the objects themselves are exactly the same. It's just where they sit in relation to the vanishing point is going to change how they look. Even more so if I drew this object over, here. So if I did another version of it, I know I said I was going to do boxes, but clearly I'm not. Two, 3/4, 3/4, 2, 3/4, 3/4. I feel like I didn't get some measurements right there, but it's okay. For practice sake, it'll be okay. So I've got my little shape here. It's sitting on the horizon line, which means then that some faces are going to get kind of blocked out. So in this case, because I'm sitting here skewed to the right of the vanishing point, I can't see the right side of this object, no matter if it's sitting above or below. But this time I'm left to the vanishing point, so now I'm not going to see any of the left side of the object. But furthermore, because I'm on the horizon line, I'm not going to see like the top or the bottom of the object. So this time I'm just only going to see kind of this side of my object. 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. So because I'm sitting directly on that horizon line, I don't see either the top or the bottom. In cases like this is when like shading areas can really kind of help come in handy to show differences between some of the faces of what is like what's the side versus what's the front. But personally, I don't, like I've mentioned before, I don't like to do too much shading when it comes to perspectives, But yeah, your 1-point perspective is going to be highly dependent on where your object sits on your horizon line. So when you do this practice, yours might not be exactly the way mine looks because it's going to really be dependent on that horizon line itself and that vanishing point. And I encourage you to do a couple of practices with it just so you can kind of get a good feel of how perspectives work. But so for this one, we're going to call it the cross. In the next box, we'll put our own name. Always make sure we're lettering, nice, neat, all caps. The date you drew this on. The scale, which in this case I did it at half scale, so 1 to 2, or 1 inch on paper is 2 inches in real life. And then this is drawing 1 of 1.